Me to this Friday's disappearance, and I guess the coincidental part is that the last name of the woman we'll be covering this Friday, her last name is also Bowman, just like Andrea Bowman. I just don't, that was not planned. We will be covering the disappearance of Debra Bowman this Friday. She also went by the last name, by the name Deborah Booth, Booth. I think that was her married name, but she was divorced at the time of her disappearance. She disappeared May 26th, 2004, so over 16 years ago. And she disappeared right down the street from me in Largo, Florida, which is kind of like in a southeast direction. That is close to where my brother and his wife live. And in fact, his wife, who is now retired, she was a vice principal at Largo High School. So in talking about this disappearance, her sister, Jo, is the guest. We will be talking about locations and streets that I go by all the time. All the time. And this will be very much like when I covered Kelly Rothwell's disappearance back, within the first 8 shows of Unfound, 8 episodes, where she disappeared directly south of me in Indian Rocks Beach. And I go by her condo all the time. And I go by where her car was found all the time. It was parked very close to the post office that I use. So this is going to be another one of those disappearances where even when I did the interview, I'm like, yeah, I know where that is. And so the story is, Debra was 40 years old, but at the age of 35, she had had a stroke. She had recovered from it, except for the fact that she could barely talk. She wasn't totally mute, but she could get out simple thoughts like over the phone. But for more complex sentences, she would have to have a pen and paper to write everything out. And because of this, she couldn't get a job, so she was living on Social Security. And at the time of her disappearance, she was married, had a few children, got divorced. But because of this issue, her ex-husband, got custody of the children. But they had a good relationship, and in fact, her ex-husband would allow her to come over once in a while and stay over, and of course, take care of the kids and be the mother that she was. But at the time of her disappearance, she was living with a friend of the family. Her name is Betty, and some of other Betty's family members. And what happened was that on May 26, 2004, Debra was having some back problems, which were very common. I think this was a residual of her having a stroke 5 years before that. So Betty took her to the Largo Medical Center. Once again, I drive by it all the time. And it was only about a mile from the house. And I will be doing a YouTube video for this disappearance, so these locations. And Betty dropped her off. And then approximately 3 hours later, Debra called, said that she was done. She needed to be picked up as best she could. Once again, she had a very hard time talking. But once again, otherwise physically, her mind was fine. Well, Betty shows up, and Debra's not there. And Debra's never seen again. And maybe, and I even talk about this in the intro to this episode, but this is at least the third disappearance that we've covered where somebody calls someone to pick them up, and when the person shows up, the person isn't there. I think about Shane Fell's disappearance. Of course, he was in a car wreck, called his brother to come pick him up. 20 minutes later, the brother shows up. Shane's gone, still unsolved. Crystal Morrison from Concord, North Carolina. She's at work. She's sick. She calls a guy who's babysitting her son to pick her up. This guy and her son show up. Crystal's not there. Of course, we now know, because it was solved, that after she called this guy, she took a walk down to a convenience store to get something, and then she just wandered off into the woods near there and died, probably from heat exposure. She was sick. She was underweight. She was a recovering addict. And just not sure. Maybe she had a heart attack, or maybe she had a stroke or something and collapsed in the woods on private property, and she was not found until 2019. So I would recommend that you think about those two disappearances as you're listening to this episode on Friday. Maybe you even want to go back and listen to those two episodes again. Those are the two that come to mind. Maybe there are a couple others that I haven't thought of that are also similar. So the title of this episode, which makes sense, I'm just calling it In My Town, because this happened in my town. And once again, it was interesting for me to talk to Joe about where Debra was living, all these different streets and places that she lived, and Largo Medical Center, etc. I'm like, I go by all those places all the time. And in fact, for this disappearance, I actually went over there and parked my car and did at least a partial walk from the Largo Medical Center going up toward where Debra was living at the time, although I did not do it at night. So that's this Friday. Once again, Debra Bowman. In some places, she's known as Deborah Booth. She is not on the Charlie Project, but she is on NamUs. May 26, 2004, from Largo, Florida. Episode called In My Town. The guest will be her sister, Jo Bowman. And so that's about it. What do we do tonight? Talked about disc golf the past weekend. Talked about disc golf coming up this weekend. Dog got a doctor's appointment. Just check up on Monday. Tom Brown's Body. A couple new videos that I'm going to post tonight before I go to bed on the YouTube channel. Susan Morphew. Not sure if anything's going on there or not. Dogs seem to have sniffed something. I'm not sure I believe it. This interview that fell through from a couple years ago, but this person contacted me again, and this person believes that we can now do the interview. I hope we can. Show that contacted me and why I declined to give up the audio from a certain episode. Dr. Telesco from last Thursday. Jody Husentrut. We're going to be covering that, I think, shortly. The newsletter tomorrow. Unfound on the Ground for premium Patreon members. The fourth one is now free for all of you who are not Patreon members, but you should consider being one. And then Kathy Turkanian appearing on people.com. And we finished up with Debra Bowman this Friday. Took a bunch of questions from all of you. So that's it. What a night. Like I said, it goes so fast. It just goes so fast. I just don't know where the minutes go. But that's all I have for you tonight. And you will hear me Friday. And then you, all of you who are in the think tank, we will talk about the disappearance of Debra Bowman on Sunday evening. Good night, everyone. Thank you for all the questions, comments. Thank you for giving this live show some of your time tonight. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. And if you got in late, it will be automatically available for you to watch from the beginning right here on the channel. Subscribe if you aren't a subscriber yet. Good night.